Okay, we'll be getting started here in just a minute. Got a lot to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about this heat wave in the southwest, record-breaking temperatures in Phoenix, that area. No end in sight. We'll check in on hurricane season and where we're at. Of course, we got a lull in activity right now, at least activity that's affecting the U.S. Let's see if we get a few people on for this live show. Of course, I haven't done one in a while since we were talking about that last tropical system that potentially could have affected the U.S. That didn't pan out, so thankfully that was good. Well, we'll get started here in a minute. I'm going to be streaming this on YouTube as well. I should say I won't be streaming, but I will be posting this to YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube later, go ahead and leave some comments, and I'll get to those comments and questions on YouTube. Again, I know I haven't done this in a while, so people probably weren't expecting me to stream tonight, but we'll check in. Like I said, we've got a lot to talk about in the weather world. Alrighty. Let's go ahead and get started. Good to see everybody. It's been a while, like I said. Hopefully everybody's doing well out there. If you're watching live tonight, go ahead and leave a comment. Or leave a comment later if you're watching this later on, or you're watching on YouTube, and I'll get to it. For those of you who are on YouTube and are not familiar with the Bearded Weatherman, or anybody on the page that's new to the Bearded Weatherman, I'm a veteran of the Navy. I was a forecaster in the Navy in Norfolk, Virginia, at the weather center there, the Maritime Forecast Center. We would forecast for ships at sea, bases all throughout the Western Hemisphere, all the way from Texas and Naval Air Station Corpus Christi in the Gulf of Mexico, all the tropical Atlantic down to Cape of Good Hope in Africa, the South Atlantic, North Atlantic, throughout the seasons, throughout the year. We were there watching the weather for our ships and bases over into Europe, the Mediterranean, all the way to the Bosporus Straits at the mouth of the Black Sea. So we covered a lot of weather, and I have experience in a lot of different climate zones, tropical weather, severe weather, North Atlantic winter weather, European climates zones, North Africa, all types of different climatology that we covered, or climate zones and weather regimes. So that's my background, a little bit about my background. I've been doing this on the page now for now 3 years, since 2020. I started back during the pandemic. I was quarantined. I was sheltering in place, whatever you want to call it, and I was bored and said, you know what, I'll try this thing out, doing weather, live weather, and covering all the weather headlines. So there you go. That's my background. So you can see over my right shoulder some of the things from the Navy. I was on the John C. Stennis, an aircraft carrier. That's my command ball cap up there, my E5 rank insignia, so second class petty officer. And then down below it is my Neptunus Rex, domain of Neptunus Rex certificate. When I crossed the line, that's became a shellback when we crossed the equator in 2004, during a deployment I did on that ship. So that's me, and then the tag there is from the movie Jaws. That's my favorite movie. If you can see that here on my T-shirt. And anyway, that's that. So let's get into talking about the weather right now. So I just had this up. This is the local weather there in Central Florida, where a lot of my followers are, a lot of my supporters. And that's where I'm from originally. That's my home state. I'm from Volusia County, which you can see up here, right? And that is where I grew up. I'm now located in Salt Lake City. I work for an airline out here as a flight supervisor or flight dispatcher, aircraft dispatcher is my job title. We watch the weather, we plan flights to avoid weather. So I use that background in meteorology to do my job that I'm currently doing today. I don't like to say the name of the airline because I'm not speaking for the airline in any kind of capacity. So I don't mention that, but again, this is what I do every day is watch the weather. And so let's talk about weather. As you can see, we had some thunderstorms here. Those sea breeze type thunderstorms we see every afternoon there in the state of Florida, especially Central Florida, in the summer. You can see they're starting to die down as the sun is setting over there, and the heat source for those thunderstorms is dying off, and so we don't get that convection, that rising air, and those thunderstorms that form during the day. That is all past, and so right now we're seeing that those thunderstorms starting to die off. Looks like I got someone watching out there live. If you're watching live, go ahead and leave a comment. If you want to support the page in any capacity, you can send some stars my way. That's always appreciated. So again, weather's dying off there in Central Florida, which is of course what happens this time of night. So I want to check in on that. All right, let's talk about this heat wave over the Southwest. The Phoenix metro area has really been affected by this weather. It's affected us at the airline because when it's really hot, and Phoenix is also a little bit it's not too high up in altitude, but it is higher up than, like, say, at sea level. We get what's called a hot and high regime, and so that affects aircraft performance. It means that the aircraft can't generate enough lift to take off. And so we've been having a lot of problems there in Las Vegas and Phoenix getting our flights to take off on time because it's so hot that it restricts the amount of weight we could put on the aircraft. So we can't really take off and go to our destinations with the requirements like fuel and things like that. So definitely affecting the airline, but obviously the greatest impact is going to be to the population, right? The folks that live there, especially elderly folks. Folks that work outside for a living with extreme heat. We'll talk about the record that was set here in a second, but I wanted to show you a satellite view because we're going to talk about why this is happening, and we're also going to talk about when this might, there might get some relief for the folks out there. But what's going on and what's causing this extreme heat and this heat wave is this really large ridge in place over the Southwest. The ridge in the upper levels is a high pressure at the surface. You have sinking air, meaning you don't get much cloud cover to sort of relieve those folks. It's pretty dry, but these ridges are basically bubbles of very hot air that set up in the summertime in these areas, and that's what's occurring. And with this giant ridge in place, it's causing this extreme heat to occur. So we can actually look at that on a surface map. You've probably seen these on the news or something like that. But you see this H here, which indicates, of course, a high pressure center. You see the H over Arizona. Here's Arizona, right? And Phoenix is basically right. It's right on top of Phoenix. Basically, here's Vegas. You have high pressure all over these areas, and that inhibits air from rising and getting any kind of relief from this very hot air at the surface. So that's what's going on there as far as the meteorology is concerned. We can kind of check in here on the National Weather Service Phoenix Weather Forecast Office, WFO, there in Phoenix, indicating this heat wave, prolonged heat, persisting through at least all of this week. Risk is in the major to extreme categories, meaning, you can't work outside for too long, you can't be outside for too long. Causes a lot of drain on the power system because air conditionings are running. It's dry there, as you can see. Of course, in the Southwest, it's very dry there. It's the deserts, Sonoran Desert, right there. So this is the outlook as it stands there in Phoenix. And again, long duration heat Today was at least up to 117 degrees Fahrenheit, so just like an oven outside. As you see here, even warmer through the rest of the week at 112 to 119 degrees Fahrenheit for your highs. They do indicate some of the precautions that those folks can take. You can stay hydrated, avoid outdoors between 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. So basically, anytime the sun is out, don't go outside, which is obviously causes a lot of problems. I mean, people need to work. They need to. There's construction that's occurring, so it's really causing quite a bit of problems in all departments. You know, not just for your health and burden on the healthcare system there, but also economically. You know, because folks can't work outside. If you have AC, use it as it says. Fans will not be adequate, and stay in a cool place, including overnight. So basically, they're telling you stay indoors all day and all night, and that again that causes a lot of problems for those folks out there. So again, very heat wave, extreme heat. You know, they do talked about the heat exhaustion, heat stroke, and some of the symptoms of that. Talking about some of the precautions you can take and the ways you can kind of mitigate that or lessen your chances of heat stroke, which is very dangerous, can cause death, as it says here, or permanent disability. And so obviously that's very dangerous. So stay cool, stay hydrated, stay informed is the message at the bottom that you see there. I don't know if you can see that. Maybe now you can. But in any case, that is from the National Weather Service. We did have the headline that Phoenix broke a heat record set in 1974. So half a century ago, it broke the record for most consecutive days with 110, at least 110 degrees or hotter in temperatures. You can see all the haze out there associated with such very hot air. Causes a lot of haziness. That high pressure traps a lot of that air at the surface from rising, so you get a lot of the pollution and things like that gets trapped at the surface, since it gets very hazy, restricts visibility for aircraft and things like that. But we see here in the headline that the most days at above 110 degrees Fahrenheit with 18 days has now been broken. Today it reached 110, at least 110 by noon at the Phoenix airport. And you can see some of the current conditions now. So looking here on the National Weather Service, you see 111 currently there in Phoenix. Very hot. It's still very hot there. As of what would be, would be their standard time. So that should be 6:43 p.m. Local right now. It's what it is here in Salt Lake. We're on daylight savings. So we'd be, well, no, I guess it would be 5:43 p.m. That's standard time. Anyway, it's almost to the evening time, but it's obviously still very hot there. Currently, you can see that observation. Look, 115 here in the center of downtown Phoenix, 111 just to the north, but look, 115 is now their current temperature. It's very, very hot, obviously, and continues to be the case. All right, let's go ahead and look out in the future, and let's do a forecast. Let's talk about again, we talked about that ridge in place over the southwest right now. Okay, Jillann's checking in. She says, now that is hot. Yeah, it is. It's very hot. You know, when I moved out here, I came from Florida, and people talk about the difference between dry heat and wet heat or humidity. Well, yeah, it's very hot in Florida, but that's it. When I moved out here, I moved to Utah, southern Utah. Experienced my first summer last year when it would climb up there in the 105, 110 range. Look, it's 105 degrees. I don't care how much humidity's on the air. It's hot, okay? It's like an oven out there. So, again, we're looking at the reason why. This giant ridge that's over, this is our water vapor imagery, which indicates the upper levels and what's going on with our ridges and troughs. You see a ridge in place over this most of the west right here, and then you see the trough over the east coast, which is what causes all that weather. Troughs are associated with weather. Uh, Ridges are associated with not much weather, so you don't see much weather around here. A little bit more towards the edge of this ridge, but in any case, it's associated with very still air, mild weather typically, or at least I should say in terms of not much rainfall and things like that. But anyway, that's what's happening in the upper levels right now, and to cause this, and again, just to show you here, this high pressure area in place. I'm gonna close these curtains a little bit. Still daylight here in Utah, but you see that high, and that's the reason why it's this high pressure regime that's causing this. Let's look at the models. So we're going to look at the Euro model here to see if there's any relief in sight. You can see, look, this is the ridge. This is the high pressure regime. You can see the ridge there, right, on the models. This is at the 500 millibar level, about 18,000 feet, where a lot of these upper level features like ridges and troughs are going to be notated or you know, they're going to be, what's the right, I notated, I don't know, they're going to show up there in an upper level setting, which is what the upper level weather is what drives our weather down here at the surface. So we, as meteorologists, we really focus on our upper level features like ridges and troughs to give an indication of what the pattern is going to be. Again, when you see a trough, you know the pattern is going to be for wet conditions, or at least weather, right? It's thunderstorms, rain showers, things like that. When you see a ridge, you generally don't see much weather because you're seeing sinking air below it down to the surface. It's called subsidence in meteorology, or subsidence, subsiding air. And that's what's happening. And so you can see the current conditions as of today, the Tuesday, July 18th, if you can see that okay. I got my banners in place, so I'll zoom or scroll up a little bit. In any case, that's for July 18th today, Tuesday. Let's go forward. Continues to be that bubble of high pressure, that ridge in place. This is tomorrow. Continues on, stays the same. Continues. They even got this ridging all the way up into western Canada and the northwest, so probably going to be some hot conditions up there as well. We'll look at the temperature forecast in just a second. But I'm just showing you that as long as this stays like this ridging, see this ridge, because it looks like a mountain, right? Like a ridge. This looks like a trough, right? It goes down, ridge, and a trough. So the ridge is staying in place there over the west. It's hot up here in Salt Lake too, by the way. It's been over 100 here. Very hot for this area. Keep going. Here we are into the end of the week. And like the National Weather Service in Phoenix said, this is expected to last at least through the end of the week. Still have this giant ridge in place. By the weekend, there it is, right? So this all very still hot air down here in the southwest. Continues through Saturday. Again, through the rest of Saturday, into Sunday, into Monday, into the middle of the week on my birthday, July 26th, next week. Continues. All the way. See all the ridging here, right? All the way through. That's next weekend, so that's full 7 days out, or over 7 days. Continues, at least according to the Euro models, forecasting it all the way through the end of this timeline, 10 days from now, the July 28th. So the bad news is no end in sight for this heat wave in Phoenix. So not only are records broken with this, but they're shattered with more than 18 days now and no relief in sight for the Southwest. So this is a record-shattering event. We're going to talk about some of the reasons why this is happening in more of a climate-centric view, or why this might be happening as far as Earth weather, not just the local weather that I'm sure, or I should say the U.S. level weather, that I'm showing you here. All right, I got Terry's checking in saying super hot. Always the king of understatement, Terry. Yes, it's very hot there, isn't it, Terry? And no end in sight. Jillian says, well, happy ISO birthday, TVW. That, I guess, counts as saying isobar, so I'll go ahead and toast to you guys out there. Have a little sip of mineral water. There you go. No relief in sight for these areas. We could look out a little bit further with the GFS American model. Maybe towards early next month, you start to see this trough dive down a little bit in there. Maybe it flattens out that ridge. So maybe early next month, there might be some relief. But again, we are talking about models that go out past 10 days, and we can't assign as much accuracy to those or as much weight. So who knows when this there will be relief for these folks. It's really, really unfortunate. Let's see what I got here. This is just showing you the observations. 111, 115 temperature, heat index 111. This is hot. Look, there's not any humidity. It's very dry, but that's why the heat index is actually a little lower than the air temperature. But hey, 111 degrees. I don't care who you are. That's hot. You can see the hundreds here throughout yesterday, today. Here's hundreds. Rarely dips down below the 90s. Look at all this. And the mid 90s is your low. That's your low temperature at night. So it just goes on and on. Look how many days this is. And no relief in sight for these folks. All right, let's talk about why this is happening. We're going to talk about hurricane season in a second, Terry. We're going to check in on the tropics. I will check in on that here in a minute. Let's just talk a little bit about what's going on. Well, we've been talking about this on the page, and it's this right here that's really a big culprit in this, and that's El Nino, right? El Nino is warmer than average ocean temperatures for the tropical Pacific, and you can see here this is based on 30 years of climatology from 81 to 2010, analyzed today. You can see that here's your anomaly or difference between the normal temperature there at the surface of the ocean, the sea surface temperature. You can see here the ocean temperature, whatever you call it, same thing. But it's here's the difference, right? So you start getting into these higher values here where it's brighter red, right? I should say darker red. You can see at least 5 degrees Celsius difference between the average temperature there in the tropical Pacific and normal. So we are now in a El Nino. El Ninos are associated with drought conditions and very high temperatures, not only in the U.S. but in Europe as well. Europe has been having record-breaking temperatures as well. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about climate change and the effect that it has on it. And bottom line is that there are, at least back to when records were kept, which was back in the late 1800s, we are seeing warmer temperatures on the planet than any time since then. And so that is climate change, and certainly there's discussions about what's behind it, greenhouse gases, things like that. It's a lot of information out there about climate change, but in any case, with El Nino, which is what we're seeing now, we do tend to see higher temperatures here in the U.S. and Western U.S. especially, and Europe, and that's what we're seeing. And it's all based on this. A lot of it's based on this weather regime called El Nino out there in the Pacific. It dictates a lot of the weather here on Earth. The oceans, which cover 2/3 of our planet, that was always in the Navy recruiting posters. Hey, you're going out there. There's 2/3 of the planet we take care of as in the Navy, and obviously take quite a bit of pride in that, defending our interests out there at sea. But in any case, the oceans being are a huge factor of our weather, relating to our weather on this planet. They store a lot of the heat that the sun provides, right? And actually, that's why we don't see the warmest temperatures in our summer or the hottest temperatures don't occur until about mid to late July, which is where we're at, right? Rather than June 22nd, the solstice, when the sun is at its zenith, it's its highest point above us, but it takes a little bit longer for those warmer temperatures to occur because the oceans store a lot of that heat, and it takes longer for water to heat up versus land. I mean, you know this just by boiling a pot of water. You know the metal that heating element is in contact with heats up a lot quicker than the water in the pot itself. It takes a lot longer for it to hit that boiling temperature, right? So that's what's happening out there in the oceans, and that's also why it takes until, usually don't see our peak activity in the Atlantic for hurricane season until late August, beginning of September. And so we'll talk about that in just a second. Here's some predictions on ENSO, or I should say El Nino Southern Oscillation. You notice here plus values, meaning above normal, warmer than average ocean temperatures. Here's your negative, so this would be a La Nina down here. We don't see that at all, right? You see all the models are generally favoring this warmer than normal or El Nino event to continue on through at least the end of winter. You can see that the most of the models, the average is the trend is indicating El Nino will continue through the winter. Typically El Ninos last longer than La Nina events. We're talking now up to 5 years. So if that's the case, expect this trend of very high temperatures in the west to continue, and that's generally what you see with El Nino, and I'm talking for years. So unfortunately that's the case. That maybe that once it cools down in winter, again next summer we'll probably see the same kind of phenomenon, drought conditions, things like that, more forest wildfires. It's an unfortunate thing that happens related with El Nino. Here's the outlook from the Climate Prediction Center. Here's your seasonal outlook all the way through September. That's basically all summer. And you see, no surprise, above average temperatures are expected through that entire time frame. And when you see it's very likely to occur, 70-80% is a very high number in meteorology, obviously. So very high chance that will continue. And again, it is based on this El Nino that's occurring. All right, let's do what I know what Terry was waiting for. We'll check in on the tropics. Here we got Dawn out here, tropical storm Dawn, way out in the Atlantic, no threat to land at all. But got our tropical storm out there right now. Not forecasted to come anywhere near land either in the U.S. or Europe. Here's our 7-day outlook, so you see that they don't expect anything else to come down the line except for Dawn in the next week. We'll go here to an outlook. So this is a good forecast model that I use to predict trends in activity or frequency of tropical weather in the Atlantic. And here I got this. This is the run from this morning, July 18th. So we're looking now out to July 25th, so a full week from now. You see the reds here? That means higher winds in the upper levels, higher winds in the upper levels of our troposphere, which indicates, or which generally does not favor tropical activity, right? So you have higher winds in the upper levels, you get more wind shear, you get fewer tropical systems. And you can see very high values here, these reds, indicating higher wind speeds in the upper levels. So that is bad news for tropical systems. So that's out through next week. So that's what the model's predicting as we stand now. We go through until the week after that, early August, as you can see here. This is 2 weeks out, right? 2 weeks out of this model forecasts this trend to continue. Not quite as strong, those upper level winds, but you still see red values indicating higher winds. You do see in the Pacific much lower wind values. Here's your negative values here, right? The greens. That means less winds there, and so more of a chance that there'll be tropical systems out there. We'll go forward. Now this trend is weakening as far as the upper level wind flow here in the Atlantic, so that could favor some development maybe in the Atlantic out here. We have very warm temperatures out there right now, much warmer than normal for this time of year. So you can see all the red values over here means warmer than average temperatures for this time of year out in the Atlantic. So we still have a lot of warm water for these tropical systems to utilize. We just need that wind flow in the upper levels, the wind speeds to come down. We need lighter winds in the upper levels and at the surface to produce the ingredients necessary for those storms. I got to get back to that page. Hold on. Stand by. Here we go. Let's get zoomed out. I'll give you the anomalies and between the tropical Atlantic and the Pacific, which is what it's called the Madden-Julian oscillation. That's what really governs this this type of climate regime I'm talking about. There's basically an equal and opposite reaction, just like Newtonian physics. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So while there's lighter winds in the Pacific and the tropics, there's greater wind speeds values in the Atlantic. So that's that constant balancing that's occurring, called the Madden-Julian oscillation between the tropical Pacific and the tropical Atlantic. So that's what we're looking at here in this modeling. So now you go out to early August. Again, that trend like I just talked about is the weakening trend in the upper levels for wind speeds. You see the green values now starting to take hold. So lighter winds in the upper levels in the Atlantic and also the eastern Pacific. So of course there's been some activity there for middle of August. So if we're going to see some more activity, especially in our neck of the woods in the Gulf, Mexico, Caribbean basin, where we would see more of a threat from these systems, we're looking now at about mid-August, so a full month away. At least now, according to the models, as being a time to start to look at this again. Now, this is normal, right? I mean, it's later in the year. This is normally when we see more activity, later in the summer, so no real surprise there. Again, it's starting to really, those values really starting to drop. And so, again, more favorable conditions for the areas, the main development region, or the MDRs, it's called in meteorology, for tropical development by late August here. And then going forward into late August, when this model no longer doesn't go out past that time frame. Here's August 29th. We really have those conditions that are in place. So probably the outlook would be starting in mid to late August, we'll see some more activity. Again, we do have a forecast right now from Climate Prediction Center, NOAA, of a near normal season based on the fact that we have El Nino, so we don't think there'll be increased activity like we saw in years past with La Nina years, like 2020, for example. We saw all those storms, much greater, much higher than normal activity frequency in the Atlantic. Well, this is that time of year, getting in towards late August, when we would see activity. So again, it's probably going to be the case that starting in mid-August, we'll start to see more of those storms out there. So you want to have your plan in place. You want to be ready. If you're not ready already, whatever you want to say, right? I know Terry's ready. I know you're definitely ready. So if you're not ready yet, get ready. Have your hurricane supplies. Have your plan in place. I'm just showing you the forecasts from the Euro. You don't really see any activity. There's a little low that spins up there, but not much comes of it. So all this ridging over here is going to keep that, or this trough I should say, is what's going to keep this from developing. See all the winds, higher winds in here, 20 knots, something like that at the surface. So this will probably not pan out to anything here for next week. I'm sorry, for the end of the week. Let me look at 12Z run, see if we can see anything. There's end of the week. You see, here's dawn. You see that system peters out, dissipates, because all the faster winds over here, the trade winds. See the wind bars when you have two flags, that's 20 knots at the surface. That is bad for a tropical system. You need lighter winds for tropical systems to start to form, and you don't have that right now out in the Atlantic. So, getting all the way out, continuing on past my birthday, July 26th, to the end of next week, and we don't see anything. No lows stamped there, no systems spinning up. So again, the forecast for the tropics continues to be nothing to report. NTR. November Tango Romeo. That's basically all I got for tonight, guys. I mean, appreciate you coming on as usual. I know it's a couple people. You, Terry and Jillian, appreciate your support, guys. Jillian says 2020 was fun. Yeah, that was my first year doing this, and there was like just this crazy amount of storms, one after the other after the other. She also asks, I heard Calvin is hitting or near Hawaii though. Maybe time for another venture. LOL. We went to Hawaii a few months ago. That was awesome. God, I don't even know if I guess I could pull up something about that. Typhoon. Yeah, let's see if that's on here. This is for what? Oh, we don't want that. Let's get a graphic up. This is from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, which is a Navy asset. So those folks over there in Pearl Harbor are watching that. You can see Calvin here. Winds no greater than 45 knots, so that would indicate that it will continue to remain a tropical storm. Calvin, right there it is. 45 knots is the most we're going to see, and then you start to see some weakening down to 30 by the end of the week here. Here's the 20th, 21st, all here. You can see the forecast is for it to impact the big island of Hawaii where we were. So down there in Kona, the far southern end of the big island, they are expecting some some tropical storm force winds or tropical depression, higher winds and gusts to occur by the weekend. So I'm sure our friends there in Captain Cook and the south side of the island there will feel some wind and get some rain there, and get some high seas and high surf for those areas. So I'm sure they'll be watching that, but we don't have at this time any kind of hurricane forecast for this system, so that's good news for the Hawaiian Islands, and certainly they're no stranger to tropical weather there as well. All right, there we go. There we checked in on Calvin, we checked in on the tropics, we talked about how there's no relief in sight for Phoenix, unfortunately, and so I wish I had better news for those folks and for all of us here in the airline industry that are affected by high temperatures like this. Affects operations quite a bit. People can't get where they want to go, and that obviously is a problem for an airline trying to make money. All right, that's it. So I will check in again soon when there's something to report. But for now, see you guys. Thanks for watching The Bearded Weatherman.